Rocket League is one of those games where there seems to be, at least according to most players, a right and a wrong way to actually play it. Players will agree that there may be different play styles, like differing ways of sort of approaching specific situations, such as some people being, more possessive of the ball. Some players are more defensive minded, some are more aggressive, but when it comes down to it, there really is sort of a specific way that Rocket League is supposed to be played. But this makes you wonder, could there potentially be more effective ways to play the game that everybody is maybe just too afraid to really try or implement? And especially in high ranks, everyone is kind of tied to playing the game a specific way, and people just really don't want to try anything new past maybe some new mechanics that they've been practicing here and there. Maybe there are some strategies that nobody has really tried that could actually be super strong and possibly change the meta forever, but people aren't really doing that for the most part, except for some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this video. So in this video, I'm going to bring you 4 crazy Rocket League strategies that actually work in the game. Now, do they work because they're actually good strategies, or because everyone is so set in their ways that they just get lost whenever someone does something different? I don't know, it really could be either or. Maybe it's a combination of the two things. Anyways, I just wanted to present these to you guys. I'm sure you've heard of some of these, but probably not all of them, and you can try them out and see if they work for you. Before we get into the video, I want to quickly mention that I actually have a Rocket League course. I know a lot of you have already checked this out, but if you haven't, I've put a link in the description. Basically, I partnered with Gamers Ready on a Rocket League mechanics course. So in this video, we're going to talk a lot about strategy and positioning and stuff like that. But that video goes over what is probably the most important aspect of Rocket League, and that is just mastering all of the different mechanics that you can in this game. Check it out. Use code FLuuMP when you buy it for 30% off. Again, link is right there in the description just to make it easy for you. All right, let's get back in. So the first one is something that I actually remember trying with my friends when we played way back in the day when we were just absolutely terrible, and this is the double goalie method. So also, you guys probably know who Musty is, and many of you have probably seen the video on this. He basically comes up with a way of doing the double goalie method. Basically, it's a 2v2 strategies where both players sit in net, and whenever one of them saves the ball, they then take possession and go for an attack and go for a solo play. And if they don't score off of that possession and that player's attack is stopped, that player then goes back to net and they basically both continue defending. So a true double goalie, or at least we used to do this, is we'd get a head of goal basically, and we would then both go sit in net, or all 3 of us would sit in net, and we would just try to not give up any goals. But in this case, it's a little different, and it actually has an offensive sort of method. They then continue to do this until the clock hits 2 minutes remaining. Once that happens, both of them go back to playing completely normal, and they do this to see if after 3 minutes of conditioning their opponents to a specific strategy and believing that they're only going to attack the ball at certain times in a very predictable way, that sudden change sort of throws them off guard. And honestly, it kind of works. It obviously isn't a perfect method, but if you watch his video, they won more games than they lost doing this. Again, this could very well be just because everyone in lobbies is sort of thrown off by anybody doing anything different. But hey, a win is a win. And actually, in a similar vein, Linkuru made sort of a similar video to this, also including OSM and Musty, but this time they did it in 3v3, where Musty and OSM were basically full-time goalies and Linkuru was a full-time attacker. And it actually worked better than expected. It sounds so dumb and it's pretty hilarious, but these strategies really do seem to throw people off, especially players who are used to just sort of the same mundane system of rotating. So this next one is pretty interesting. It's sort of like a mental strategy. Basically, you're pretending to disconnect. Now, in this image, you can see that somehow this guy managed to get his text to look like this. He made this little message pop up telling everyone that they were disconnected from the match and that they can safely leave. And judging by all of the chats, it seemed like it actually worked. Now, this is a little different and it's honestly pretty scummy, but it got me thinking about this in a more practical sense, and it also got me thinking about some ways that people have actually pretended to be disconnected. So one way would be that you could be in a ranked match and you could start just basically driving in circles, and your teammate would then tell the opponent that you're disconnecting. Maybe they would just start messing around and not attacking because they're waiting on you to be able to continue the match. Then as soon as they get close to you, all of a sudden you take the ball from them, race down the field and score a goal. Pretty savage and pretty funny. There's also another way that I think I've actually seen happen. I don't remember exactly where. I believe it was Scrubkilla, either in a show match or maybe he was just doing this on stream, but he pretended to be disconnected on the kickoff and just sat there, and then he just ran and took the ball and scored on his opponent. And it wasn't like he was driving in a circle, because actually you don't drive in a circle. That's just what happens from your perspective. That really doesn't work. But if you just sit there and maybe say that you're disconnected or something like that, or say that your controller's not working, you could then jump in and actually take the ball and score. Now, I doubt this would be super effective in most ranked lobbies because most players are tryhards and they would at least score like 4 or 5 goals on you before they would just sit there and let the clock run out. But if you got the right person, you could definitely take advantage of their decency when doing this. All right, this one is kind of a different type of strategy. This one is about altering your mindset when you go into ranked as opposed to actually having a specific strategy in game. I have adopted this strategy. Literally, I do this pretty much all the time when I play. It's basically a mentality of looking at your ranked matches differently. Instead of viewing the games as a game individually, I like to think of my ranked matches as individual series. So if I look at it as a best of 3 or best of 5 and say I lose the first 2 matches, it isn't over. I can get the next 3 or 2 and be back in it. And in my mind, it's then a series. And I don't know, it just helps me not put so much emphasis on each specific game, but it helps me to think of the actual matches as sort of part of something bigger. And I win more when I do this. And this also helps inversely. If you go in and you lose 3 games in a row, then it's almost like you've only lost 1 series, as opposed to, oh, I've lost 3 matches. Now, this might not work for everybody, but using this type of perspective of looking at ranked matches as a series instead of individual matches has really helped a lot with my mentality. Instead of being like, oh, I just lost 3 games in a row, it's more like, okay, I've lost 1 series and then on to the next one. Again, not necessarily for everybody. I could see how this maybe wouldn't work for some people, but if you get easily tilted or frustrated, or you hate when you're on a losing streak, this could really help you reset your mind and get back into your matches. And lastly, this one is kind of different. It's not so much of a strategy per se, but it's sort of a mindset, a way of thinking that I actually really wanted to bring up in this video. So the word rotations in Rocket League is probably the single most misconstrued word in Rocket League's lingo. You hear this word almost constantly, yet most people don't really understand what it means, and even fewer players understand how to actually execute rotations. Now, why is this? Well, it's because the term itself is kind of misleading. Everyone imagines rotations as these players rotating around each other in a circle in order to maintain pressure, but it's almost never the way it actually works. Pure rotation in Rocket League, especially at a high level, and not even really at that high of a level, even just like Champ 3 or Low Grand Champ, pure rotation doesn't even exist. There's something similar to rotation that many people actually mean when they're talking about rotation, but rotation in and of itself is almost a myth in Rocket League. Rocket League is just too dynamic to have this sort of set in stone system of rotating. It just isn't possible, and it just doesn't work at a high level. Because when you actually try to apply the rules of it to a high level match and you watch RLCS or any high level gameplay, you see they're almost never following that system. So what is it we're talking about? Well, instead of thinking about rotations, replace that idea with the thought of positions. Now, I know some of you will have sort of a knee-jerk reaction to this and think, okay, you don't just sit in goal and be a goalie. That's not what I'm talking about. Rocket League in its current meta is a game of positions, and that's what people, especially high-level players, are referring to when they talk about rotations. Certain zones in the field need attention from a player on your team. If a spot is in need of someone to occupy it, and it has become your job to occupy it, then you need to get to that position as quickly as you can. How you get into that position is somewhat irrelevant, whether you're going behind your teammates or not. That zone needs to be covered, and you need to be able to take control of that zone as fast as you can. Now, if we're going to break it down in Rocket League's current form of 3v3, there are 3 roles that need to be occupied at any given time, and this is mainly for offense, but it applies to defense as well. Now, what is commonly referred to as the first man, I like to call that the aggressor. If nobody on your team is taking up this role, somebody needs to push forward, and if it's off the ball, your job is to apply pressure to the other team, whether that be a challenge or just simply getting in their face and forcing them to throw the ball away, similar to, any sport like basketball. And if it's on the ball, if it's your job to create offense, then you have to do that. Whether that be beating a player like who is on defense, scanning the field for your teammates in order to start a passing play, or even set up a solo play. Your job as the aggressor is very important important. It comes down to you making sure that you aren't wasting possession on bad opportunities. Now, the second role I like to think of as the support, and it usually refers to the second man. This one is actually pretty easy. You kind of let the aggressor or the first man do all the work. You position yourself upfield with him and try to get into an open space and give him a good passing lane. And many people don't do this. They sit too far back in this role, and by doing so, you're sort of limiting your aggressor's options. If you're behind them just sitting there waiting, all they can really do is do a solo play. It's also your job for sort of cleaning up or supporting whatever they do lay out for you if they do go for a solo play. The third sort of role, and in my opinion this is one of the most important roles, is the guardian role, or the third man. You are the last line of defense, and if your team gets scored on, it's usually your fault. You should be close enough to the play that you're able to jump in and change roles quickly if it's called upon you, but your number one objective is really to defend the net or defend a potential turnaround of possession. Now, I don't mean you sit back in net. Obviously, that's really dumb. You need to push up with your team. You are the defense, even when you're on offense. Now, these roles seem complicated, but once you've gotten to the point where you sort of understand them, the whole game opens up and you start to look at team play differently. This is why lower ranked 3v3 is such chaos, because multiple people are trying to be in multiple roles at the same time, and that just leads to people getting into others' ways. Now, I'm only briefly describing this mindset, but if this interests you, or if you want a little more information so you can understand this better, there is a lengthy article about these roles, and this is where I got all of this information from, that I will link in the description below. And it's actually an article by someone named Zector. He's an awesome coach on Gamers Ready, and he has tons of information. He's talked to lots of high-level players, and most people agree this really makes sense. So be sure to go check that out. Even if you understand it, it could never hurt really reading through it and getting an idea of what he's saying. Definitely recommend that. All right, guys, so here are some crazy Rocket League strategies that are actually somewhat effective. Really trust me when I tell you that understanding the position or roles, especially in 3v3, is crucial to having success at that game mode, and you can even apply some of that to your thinking in 2s. Anyways, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was helpful and gave you some things to try in your own gameplay. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.